to sit with my journal before recording this episode because honestly, I wasn't feeling great about myself. I felt like I was failing at life, failing at friendships, at being the person that I thought I was supposed to be. And then a painful thought hit me, and it hit me like a punch in the gut. When was the last time you felt like someone's choice? And I was asking that of myself. And specifically, I was asking when I felt like someone's first choice. And that question stung because deep down, I was watching everyone around me move forward. They were finding partners, getting promotions, hitting life's milestones. And while I felt like I was still standing in the same place, and I felt like I was just waiting. But waiting for what? I don't know, for someone to pick me, for a sign that I was on the right path, for someone else to tell me how I was supposed to be happy and to be joyful and to finally give me the playbook. And as I kept writing, I realized something. I was tying so much of my joy to external validation, measuring my happiness by how much I fit into other people's lives rather than by how I felt in my own. I had fallen into the trap of comparison, asking myself, why doesn't my life look like theirs? And so I decided to flip the question. And instead, I asked myself, when was the last time that I felt pure joy? And the answer surprised me, because it wasn't at a party, it wasn't with a group of friends, and it wasn't when I felt chosen by someone else. It was when I was completely alone, doing something just for me. It was in a moment of freedom, when I wasn't a daughter, a friend, a dog mom, someone to listen to. It was just me, existing, breathing, just being. And that realization hit me so hard because I'd been so focused on what I didn't have that I was ignoring what I had spent years building, a life that does bring me joy. And sure, there are struggles, there are hard times, but despite it all, joy still exists in my world. And that's the thing. Joy isn't just a feeling, it's a choice, a radical, rebellious choice. Because in a world that tells us joy is a privilege, choosing joy is an act of defiance. Welcome to Taking Up Space with Jordan, the podcast where we have real, unfiltered conversations about what it means to live authentically, set boundaries, and build a life that feels like yours. If you're new here, I'm your host, Jordan. I don't know why I decided to sing that, but I'm Jordan, your internet big sister and someone who's right there with you figuring all of this out that we call life. If you haven't already, take a second to follow, like, and subscribe to the podcast. It's the best way to support this space and make sure more women hear these conversations. And if you want to connect with me outside of the podcast, you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram. My handle is the same as this podcast. It is Taking Up Space with Jordan, all one word. And I will put that down below. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I think I'll flash it on the screen somewhere around here. This looks like a good spot. So now we're going to get into it. The power of joy isn't something everyone recognizes as revolutionary. But for Black and queer communities, joy has never been a fleeting emotion. It has been an act of defiance, a tool for survival, and a vision for the future. Take slavery in America, the so-called land of the free and the brave. In the face of unimaginable brutality, Black people still found ways to cultivate joy. Not because their suffering wasn't real, but because joy was necessary. It was a form of spiritual resistance, a way to hold on to humanity when the system was trying to strip it away from them. Through music, dance, and faith, enslaved Black people created spaces of joy even when it was forbidden to them. They sang spirituals, not just as songs, but as coded messages of hope and escape. They gathered in secret to worship not just for the religion aspect of it, but also for community. They created their own wedding traditions, like jumping over the broom, so that they could honor love even when the law refused to recognize their unions. They laughed, they danced, they celebrated, because joy wasn't just a distraction, it was hope. A hope that their children would see a future beyond chains. A hope that one day freedom wouldn't just be a dream. Even hairstyles became a tool of resistance. Braiding patterns were not just expressions of beauty, they were used to map escape routes and pass on information that could lead to freedom and hope. Cornrows held messages guiding enslaved people towards paths out of bondage. Joy and creativity were intertwining with survival, proving that even the simplest forms of self-expression carried revolutionary weight. If we fast forward to the civil rights movement, Black people were no longer enslaved, but they were still far from free. Segregation, Jim Crow, the denial of basic human rights, oppression simply evolved, and yet joy remained a cornerstone of resistance. Joy was in the songs that powered marches and sit-ins, like the song "We Shall Not Overcome," not just a melody, but a battle cry. It was in the church gatherings where people refueled their spirits. It was in the laughter and love shared between activists who knew that if they didn't hold on to joy, they would be consumed by rage and exhaustion. Music itself became a force for change. Nina Simone didn't just sing, she fueled the movement. Songs like "Mississippi Goddamn" were protest anthems. But even in the fire of her rage, there was joy in the sheer act of expression, refusing to be silent. James Brown's "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud" wasn't just a song, it was a declaration of self-worth. And Black people weren't the only ones who wielded joy as resistance. The queer community did too. Pride didn't start as a parade, it started as a protest. The Stonewall riots were an uprising against police brutality and systemic oppression. But today, Pride remains a celebration. Why? Because in a world that tells queer people to be ashamed, joy is rebellion. Choosing to live openly, to love loudly, to dance, to exist without apology, that is resistance. Joy is not just a feeling. It is a weapon. It is a refusal to let oppression define the entirety of a life. It is a vision of something greater. And for Black and queer communities, joy has always been more than survival. It has been the blueprint for liberation. That blueprint carries into what we are now facing today in America. A white supremacist in office with his white supremacist friends, an ignorant belief system. We are now once again in a time where people of color and queer people are forced to resist in the face of oppression. For some of us who have grown up in white dominant spaces, this is not new for us. But for others, just now joining and opening their eyes to modern day racism and bigotry, it is crucial that we continue to celebrate Black culture and queer love. We will not be erased or policed. We will continue to show up in all forms and in all spaces through the radical act of self-expression, through fashion, art, dance, and community building. Take Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl halftime show, which we're still talking about weeks later. Not the game, but a Black Pulitzer Prize winner commanding the stage with a performance that was unapologetically Black. Then you had Samuel L. Jackson positioned as America's conscience, telling Kendrick how to perform, how to exist, to tone it down, to not be too Black, to clean it up. All things every Black kid in America has been told at some point, myself included. And this resistance through self-expression extends to the queer community as well. Look at Lil Nas X, an openly Black queer artist who has faced relentless hate for simply existing in his fullness. When Montero "Call Me By Your Name" dropped, conservatives lost their minds. Not because the song was explicit, plenty of street artists have done worse and will continue to, but because a queer Black man dared to celebrate his sexuality without shame. And what did he do? He doubled down. He turned his joy into spectacle. He turned it into a refusal to be erased. Whether it's his bold visuals, his performance, his Twitter presence, Lil Nas X embodies joy as resistance. He is Kendrick on that stage, but for queer kids who have been told to quiet down, to hide, to shrink. But joy as resistance isn't just about being seen on big stages. It's also in our everyday lives. It's in Black Twitter, where we turn pain into laughter, and memes becoming a language of resilience. It's in the way queer folks reclaim spaces, throwing house parties and creating chosen families when biological ones fail them. It's in the refusal to assimilate through bold fashion, through hairstyles that were once deemed as unprofessional, through slang and culture that mainstream America tries to steal but never fully respect. Because that's what they want. Black people, queer people, anyone outside the white cis hetero norm to make themselves smaller, to assimilate, to apologize for existing. But we won't. Whether through rap, fashion, dance, or simply walking down the street in our truth, we will continue to resist. Because joy isn't just about the past. It's about building a future where we don't just survive, we thrive. And that that is the ultimate act of defiance. And here's a reminder that I think a lot of us need to remember. The systems built by those that are not black, brown, yellow, or rainbow colored are not built to help those that are black, brown, yellow, or rainbow. Instead, they are built to suppress. Take Black women in the workplace. Our hair is used as a weapon against us. According to a research study in 2023, Black women's hair has 2.5 times more likely to be perceived as unprofessional. Ever heard of texturism? It's another form of racism, but is used explicitly against people whose hair is more textured, like my own, versus hair that is more Eurocentric. I remember when I was growing up as a little girl, I would secretly straighten my hair or wear hairstyles to bed that would force my hair to look like the other girls. Sorry, Mom. I know you liked my curly hair, but it was the trend back then. I'm so sorry. But as one of the 3 Black girls in my white rural school, I really was suffering because I felt alone, I felt isolated, and no one else really looked like me. Or I was compared to the other 2 Black girls that were at that school. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that feeling that it felt like I wasn't able to just be me. I had to show up and put on a costume. And this carried over into later in life, where until my most recent job, I felt compelled to talk a certain way, sit a certain way, look a certain way, so that I wouldn't be perceived as someone with an attitude or a tone. That was always my feedback. No matter if I said the exact same thing as my white counterparts, I was the one singled out as being the ringleader with an attitude. This type of culture in a work environment took away my joy because I felt the need to put on a whole costume every morning. I felt the need to make sure that there was no stray hairs out of place so that someone wouldn't look at me twice. I practiced my requests in the mirror so that I didn't come off as too hostile or too demanding or too this or too that. I made myself smaller and worked twice as hard for no one else's benefit other than to appease people who didn't like the way that I looked, even if they didn't say it so openly. And unfortunately, my experience is not unique. Black women, trans people, queer folks, and so many others from marginalized communities are constantly forced to suppress parts of themselves just to survive in systems that were not built for them. Look at what's happening to the trans population. Seriously, look it up. Legislation being put forth trying to force trans people to use their assigned gender at birth on their passports. Look it up. Being told that they can't be in the military. Look it up. Being told that their lives don't matter. Look it up. And all of this is for what? There is no response that justifies the blatant disrespect and bullshit mentality. Queer people fear that their right to marriage is going to be taken away, and so do a lot of interracial couples. There are so many parts of this country, specifically in America, where queer communities cannot exist without the fear for their very lives. How ridiculous is this? Because of who they love, they are being punished? So what do marginalized people do in these situations, you ask? They survive, they hide, and they exhaust themselves doing it. Because when you are hiding who you are, there's little room for rest or joy. You have to be on guard all the time, worried that someone will expose your secret because, my oh my, you're gay is apparently the worst thing. Or, you're a Black woman? And that's the thing. This isn't just about social control. It's also about economic control. These systems weren't just designed to keep us in line. They were designed to profit from us. Black women are expected to work twice as hard for less pay. Queer and trans people face workplace discrimination that keeps them from economic security. Don't believe me? Look it up. It thrives on this balance, capitalism. It tells us that if we just work harder, if we just prove ourselves, we'll finally be rewarded. But that's a lie. Hustle culture is another form of oppression dressed up as ambition. I'm going to say that one more time for you. Hustle culture is just another form of oppression dressed up as ambition. It convinces us that joy is something that we have to earn instead of something that we are inherently worthy of. And that's where the real resistance begins, daring to reclaim joy despite this whole bogus-ass system. And we must do this by embracing joy unapologetically. We have to embrace joy without the justification that we deserve it. I know it can feel hard to do that, to find the joy in a world where people are suffering due to hatred and mistrust. But if we don't, we will not survive. Remember, historically, joy is hope. Joy is a way of resting the body and the mind. If we can mourn and suffer through the pain and the agony, then we can also feel the joy. If we can do this by leaning into community, laughter, and celebration. The internet can sometimes feel like an unsafe place, but it is also a powerful tool to connect with various creators who are trying to create safe spaces for their communities. Subscribe to nonprofit organizations that are working to create awareness and celebrate the existence of different communities. One of the reasons that I really love TikTok is that if you are just curious about a different group of people or different communities, you can type into the search bar LGBTQ TikTok. And what's great about it is you're going to be exposed to various creators who, again, are creating safe spaces and raising awareness. But the internet isn't just for activism. It can also be a place for rest, for inspiration, for joy. Sometimes you do just want to watch cute dog videos. You do just want to watch dogs that have been at shelters for 1,000 days finally get adopted. You want to learn about new places to visit or see people dancing and creating for the sake of it. There is power in consuming content that simply just makes you feel good. If you're not ready to explore different communities, that's so totally okay. You can still find small daily moments of pleasure through music, dance, movement, nature. When I need a moment of joy and I just have a couple of minutes, I put on some of my favorite songs and I dance in my house. I play with my dogs. I jump up and down like no one's watching. I sing while I walk my dogs. If it's a nice sunny day, I'll take a blanket outside or go sit on a bench without my phone and just watch the world around me and find the gratitude for the life that I have built. Joy is not a reward. It is not something that you have to prove to yourself that you're worthy of. It is your birthright, and it does not have to be tied to productivity. It does not have to be earned. Capitalism tells us that only after we work hard enough, achieve enough, or struggle enough do we deserve a break, a vacation, a moment of happiness. But joy does not have to come at the end of suffering. It does not have to be rationed. It is ours to claim right now in this very moment. And we do this by also protecting our joy, by setting boundaries. Setting boundaries against those who try to diminish our joy is a must in all of this. Because when we create boundaries, we are giving ourselves the freedom to exist in a world where people feel safe and secure to be our authentic selves without the shame. For many of us, especially women, but also Black and brown folks in marginalized communities, there's this expectation that we must always be available, always accommodating, always putting others first. But protecting our joy means rejecting that expectation. It means understanding that we do not owe people our exhaustion. We do not have to perform happiness for others while secretly suffering inside. We get to say no. And no is a full sentence. No, I don't have to shrink myself to make you comfortable. No, I will not let you guilt me into proving my worth. And no, I do not need permission to enjoy my life. These are my favorite 3 no sentences. Boundaries are an act of love for ourselves and for our communities. When we learn to say no to what drains us, we open ourselves up to the possibility of more joy and more peace. We get to live our lives the way we want, regardless of the opinions of others. And for those who try to shame us for prioritizing joy, set the boundary. If someone makes you feel guilty for celebrating yourself, set a boundary. For enjoying your day, set the boundary. For choosing yourself first, set the damn boundary. Remember, them shaming you says more about them than it does about you. Joy is a radical act in a world that profits off of our exhaustion, and we have to protect it fiercely. I might have to just record this and then wake up in the morning and edit this, or I edit this. I'm not going to be able to edit this out. Well, I'm not going to be able to edit this at work. I could edit it at my mom's, but that means not editing it until like 6, honestly, probably 8 o'clock at night. Ugh. I am regretting choices this week, but that's okay. It's fine. We'll be okay. Oh, last little bit. Oops. So we have to create some tangible ways to create joy. Joy is not just a feeling, it's a practice. It's something we cultivate, something we create space for, something that we choose, even in small ways. And I want to invite you to find more joy in your life. So here are some ways that you can do that. First, having a daily joy check-in. I know this might seem silly, but just take a moment each day and ask yourself, what brought me joy today? If you can't think of anything, ask yourself, what small thing can I do right now to bring myself some joy? You can do this at the end of the day. You can do this in the middle of your day. I really like to do this at the end of the day. I have a journal that is all about tracking my growth and progress that I've made for my goals. And so part of what I've done is also thrown in there, like, what brought me joy today. And if I can't come up with anything, what I do is take a moment to plan for something the next day. Because a lot of times if you're doing it at the end of the day, you're like, I'm in bed. This is the joyful moment, is that I'm in bed and I'm about to sleep so hard. So I really like to just plan for something the next day. Maybe it's I'm going to go on a walk without the dogs, or I am going to color that day, or which we'll get into why I think that's essential for people. But just doing something that you can kind of plan for the future so that you can wake up the next day and be like, I'm going to have a moment of joy today. I've already scheduled it for myself. I'm looking forward to it. And guess what? You just brought yourself a little more joy. Which leads us into our second one, which is creating micro joy moments. Joy doesn't have to be these big grand things. It can be a 30-second dance break. It can be the first sip of your morning coffee. It can be hearing your favorite song on the radio or feeling sunlight on your face. I'm talking to you, my Pacific Northwest girlies. It's been abysmal out there. But start noticing these moments, because what ends up happening is these small little micro moments, they build into bigger things. And that's how you turn into a day being filled with joy. And it can start to take out some of the darkness that happens throughout the day. And I think it's a great way to add just a little bit of joy every single day into your life, is just those little 30-second moments. Next is creating joy rituals. Establishing small rituals that bring you happiness, your morning tea with a book, an afternoon walk, a weekly self-care night, lighting candles and playing music while cooking. These are great ways to start creating rituals for yourself that just bring you little moments of joy. So basically just trying to do something that takes you just going the little bit more to bring you a lot more joy. And our last one is unapologetic indulgence. I know that the internet can sometimes shame for mass consumerism. And so I'm not necessarily promoting mass consumerism. What I am promoting is being indulgent for ourselves. Buy the coffee, get the new purse, treat yourself to something that makes you happy without the guilt or the justification. If it brings you joy, that is enough. There is so much more shame in the world that if I decide that I want to get a new purse, or if I decide I want to buy myself a new pair of running shoes or buy a new microphone for my podcast, and I don't necessarily need it, but it's going to bring me some joy, I'm going to do it. And you know why? I'm not going to feel ashamed for treating myself to things that bring me happiness and things that bring me joy when there's so much going on in the world that makes me cry. And so we can be a little indulgent every now and then without going into this mass consumerism mentality. So practice it. Get yourself the little coffee, add the little avocado to your Chipotle. You know, do something that just gives you a little bit more joy without crossing over that line of full-blown max consumerism. Actually, I forgot one. This one's probably the most important. Start playing again. Start building Lego sets, color, paint, roller skate, bake, try a new hobby. But playing isn't just for kids. We also need to do it as adults. We need to remember that moment of joy when we were children, when we got a new toy and we would play with it for hours and hours and hours. We need to play more. We need to have fun. Because otherwise, all we're doing is just going through the monotony of everyday life, and that becomes exhausting. So something that I've been doing for myself is I have started coloring halfway through my workday. I literally have it on my calendar. At 2:30 p.m., I color. I just do one page on my coloring book. And you know what it's brought me? Not shame, not guilt, but fun. enjoy. Because I'm doing something that has nothing to do with productivity. It has nothing to do with my job. It has nothing to do with my dogs. It has nothing to do with anybody else but me making a pretty picture. And that brings me joy. I want to leave you with this powerful truth as we close today's episode. Your joy is a birthright. It is resistance. It is healing. Joy is not selfish. It is not trivial. It is necessary. It is the fuel that keeps us going, the light that pushes back against the darkness, the radical act of declaring that we are still here, still worthy, still whole. So I want you to reflect. When was the last time you let yourself experience pure joy? Not joy that was earned, not joy that was justified, just joy for the sake of it. If it's been a while, I encourage you to change that. Start small. Find one moment today just for you. Let yourself laugh, rest, play, dream, whatever joy looks like for you, and claim it. And I want to hear about it. I want to hear your joyful moments, and I want you to share them with me. Send me a DM or a post and using the hashtag #JoyAsResistance so we can create a safe space where joy is celebrated, it's uplifted and protected. Let's remind each other that we are not alone in this. I'll leave you with this final affirmation. Joy does not ask for permission. It exists boldly, freely, and without apology. And with that, keep taking up space, feel joy deeply, and never forget, it belongs to you. Kisses.